Hey there, this is the Small Fish, Big Podcast, a show for the gallus few who dream and do. If you're a small biz owner, a creative freelancer, or someone dreaming about leaving your 9-to-5, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll chat with an inspiring guest who will share their entrepreneurship story before we delve into a discussion about running a creative business. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the Small Fish, Big Podcast. Today, I am joined by Amanda Mills, who is a wedding and event florist and one of the most inspiring and determined people that I know. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is fun. And yeah, your podcast is looking awesome, sounding awesome so far. So very best of luck with it going forward.
Thank you. Something new and something to keep me feeling positive during this crazy time that we're in right now. If anybody's listening to this in the future, we are currently into week 7, I think? Week 7 of lockdown in the UK while we're recording this. So when I initially came up with the idea for this podcast, I was planning on interviewing everybody face to face. I bought a lovely microphone, which I will now show Amanda. You can't see, obviously, just on the podcast, but instead we are doing this via Zoom. So I am very thankful for technology at the very least so that we can still do this.
Yep, same.
So Amanda, to start with, will you tell us a little bit about your business journey? So if you can start from sort of, I guess, what you were doing career-wise and what made you decide to kind of take the leap to entrepreneurship.
Sure, yep. So we're going back a while now. I've been in business for just almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in November. So yeah, going back to that time, in a previous life, as you said, I'm a florist now. I don't have a shop. I'm a wedding event specialist florist. But before that, I worked in banking. So I don't know if there's any more of a bigger contrast to two careers. But I worked in retail banking for about 13 years all in, and absolutely hated it every single day. Yeah, the people I worked with was probably the best thing about it, but the actual job itself I didn't enjoy, which is really funny when you think back, because I worked my way all the way up from being a cashier to being a branch manager over all those years, and a lot of hard work went into it, but I certainly didn't enjoy it. I never really felt fulfilled. I knew something wasn't right. So that's what I did in a previous life. As I say, for about 13 years worked in banking. There was probably halfway through that 13 years, there was a kind of period of thinking, I don't know if this is what I want to do forever. I think at that point, my manager at the time was trying to put me down a route of just a route of the banking, which involved taking exams and studying and different things. I think at that point I thought, I don't know if this is even what I want to do, never mind to put effort in to be studying for different financial exams and whatnot. I think at the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to do something creative and something that I could then go on to do for myself. So I knew I wanted to try being self-employed. I had no idea whether I would like it or be cut out for it, and something creative. But I'll be honest, I didn't know what that was. And I can't say I always had this burning desire for floristry or anything like that. I'm not going to lie. That's not what happened here. So anyway, at that kind of halfway point in banking, I remember actually toying with the idea of photography, going into photography. I spoke to a few local photographers. There was just no vacancies at the time. They would be taking on a trainee just from the start, but there was nothing happening at the time. I looked at a few college courses and I don't know, it just didn't quite feel right. And then by chance, I literally opened the local paper and there was an advert for a trainee florist in it was a new startup, kind of mail order flower company. I don't know, I just thought, okay, let's try that. As I say, no previous experience in floristry whatsoever. I could appreciate flowers. I enjoyed receiving flowers and arranging them in the house, but absolutely nothing really beyond that. So long story short there, I took that job, which also involved a day release to college each week. So I had on the job experience, plus I got to do the college qualification, which was really important actually. There's a lot of stuff to be learned at that point of view for mechanics and behind the scenes things for floristry. That stood me in really good stead for the future. I did that. As I say, it was a startup company that I joined at that point, who was doing mail order flowers, which was really quite new at the time. There was a few problems behind the scenes with that company. So that company didn't actually last long, and I then went on to work for a retail shop. So learned loads of different things across those two types of companies, two totally different businesses. So the long story short part is life then got in the way, circumstances changed, had to move house, needed to earn more money, and I went back to banking. So I left floristry after a couple of years and went back to banking, and then quickly moved on to that branch manager position. I said before, I didn't enjoy it, but I could do it. I knew what I was doing, it paid the bills, I was comfortable. And how many people are in that job where you're just comfortable and it's paying the bills and it's terrifying, but you're not happy?
It's just so hard to leave, I think, when you have a setup like that as well, because I was similar, like back in Canada and working all of these different, so it wasn't, I guess, a traditional 9 to 5 in that I was doing more contract work, but there was always something missing for me as well. As much as I enjoyed parts of what I was doing, I knew that wasn't for me. That kind of office lifestyle wasn't for me. But it's hard when you're earning a good income and it feels quite safe, and you know that even if you lost that job you could get another in the industry. It's pretty hard to leave that security and that comfort.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's all it was. It was just a job. So then, as I say, that was that kind of midpoint where I had the floristry qualification, I had a good bit of experience behind me, went back to banking, and always did friends, family, weddings, for flowers for weddings and whatnot. Oh, excuse me. Continued that going for a while, just doing weddings of people I knew. And I really knew that I enjoyed the wedding side of it more than the retail. So I'd had a glimpse of the behind the scenes mail order flowers. I'd had a glimpse of retail, that's everyday birthdays, celebration flowers, as well as weddings and events and whatnot. I think I really quickly realised that it was the weddings and events that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the chats with the client about what they were trying to achieve and how we could really transform something, a really blank canvas, into something quite spectacular with flowers and foliage and design and whatnot. So although working in banking, I always kept my hand in floristry, dipped in and out of that over the years. So again, fast forwarding then to 2004, late 2013, early 2014. So sadly and really quickly, my mum passed away, really, really quickly out of the blue. And I think things like that shift your perspective again when it came to work. And again, I just thought, what on earth am I doing here? Just re-evaluated a lot of things. It really did just open your eyes to a lot of things, and realising just how unhappy I was with such a big part of my life. I'm there every single day at work, every day, long hours, late nights, and not enjoying it. Whereas I knew I had this skill and I had a passion and I had something that I had to explore in the background. So I think that whole, as much as a really upsetting time, really, really burnt a fire somewhere and just really got you going to push forward, because it's the age old, and it's age old because it's true. Life is too short.
Yeah.
And how quickly it can be snatched from you. So it was a case of what is the worst that could happen. And let me assure you, it was not the right time. There's no right time. The stars were not aligned. The bank account was not bursting at the seams. We were, it wasn't as if, this was a great time to do it, but it felt like a never time. So the business was officially launched in November 2014, but as you'll know, and as any small business owner listening to this knows, a lot of work goes on before that launch button is pressed. I know even your podcast, you've been working on it for ages, and now you're I think most of the 2014 was spent just figuring it all out, going to all the business gateway courses and all the online classes, reading all the books, writing the business plan, which I don't think anybody ever really even looked at, but you're told you need one. So
you did well to do it. I never finished mine.
I don't think mine was ever properly finished, and it's certainly changed probably on a weekly basis, if not daily anyway. But yeah, just trying to figure out what I actually wanted, and I think I'd already knew I didn't want a shop as such. If I was going to do this business, it wasn't just about having a business. It certainly wasn't a source of income. It was going to become a new way of life. And I didn't want to be, for me, I didn't want to be tied to a shop where I had to be there 9 to 5 again. I was really worried about becoming into that rut again, because that's something I didn't enjoy about being in the bank. So yeah, I had it quite clear in my mind what I wanted to specialise in, where I wanted to go with it, how it would run, but keeping a massive open mind that could change, and it will change, and it'll evolve as I go and the business grows and whatnot, which is exactly what it has done. Yeah, so launched in November that year, and I have never looked back, never at all. I still continued to work full time, I think for another 18 months or so after I hit the launch button. And then the business just took over my day job, basically.
So how did you manage that? Because I think a lot of us are in the same boat when we start out, in that we still need the income from our regular 9 to 5 or whatever job we had before that. So not a lot of people can just quit their job and start their business full time. They're kind of trying to do both at once. So how did you navigate that? How did you manage to find the time and the hours to do both?
Yeah, that was tough. I think that's probably that, and then going into the first year or so of being full-time in the business, probably the hardest I've ever worked ever in my life. Long hours. But there's a determination that just fires it if you really want something bad enough. So basically I would, and I did everything myself to keep costs down. So I would set up my own website, I had to learn how to do all of that, and all that kind of thing. And I just got up early. So if I started work at 9, I'd maybe get up at 6 and do an hour before getting showered and heading into the branch. And then I'd just do the same. I mean, I would sit and work on it all night long once I got home from my other job. Because, yeah, as you say, I certainly wasn't in a position to just give up a full-time income and work on it. And even so, say after 18 months, it took to build up that kind of client base and bookings and whatever, and it was still very nerve-wracking to give up my job, absolutely, my main job. But yeah, that's what I did really for the run-up to launching the business, and for about 18 months after, was essentially worked 2 jobs, worked a day job, and then just worked on the business at every available hour. Not very sociable time, I guess, but it was so worth it. It just was.
I think you're right in what you said about the determination thing. I think that's why I always say with small businesses, if they're successful, it's because people wanted it badly enough. And I think that is the biggest thing. It's not necessarily the people who are the best at what they do or the most organized, or everybody thinks you have to be all of those things. But actually, I think you have to want it bad enough to put in that time to work 12 and 15-hour days until you can leave your job. And then, like you said, even your first year or 2 years, or even now in business, let's be honest, I bet we all work way more hours than we did when we worked a regular 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, if you're thinking of leaving your 9 to 5 to go self-employed to work less hours, then it's probably unlikely, especially in the first few years. It's very unlikely. You'll probably work double, as you say. But it's totally different. It's so different. When I was working long hours in my 9 to 5 job, I was under pressure, under just so much stress, and all messages coming from above. You're trying to execute left, right and centre, but doing it for yourself, it's for you. So it's just totally different. And when you start to get those, you put yourself out there and you start to get inquiries in and whatever, there's no other feeling like that first inquiry. I mean, I'll never forget my first bride. In fact, we're still in touch to this day. The first one who actually believed in me when I was just starting up. And everything after that gets really exciting as well when you start to reap the rewards of what you're putting out there and you start to get feedback. And it's exciting. It's hard work, but it's really, really exciting. And it's a pressure that's very different from working for someone else.
I totally agree. And I think what's really nice about it is that the harder you work, the more your business grows and the better you get at what you do. So I always felt when I worked for other people, like the harder I work, the better their company does,